So now that we know that the Bulls will be drafting 12th in this upcoming draft in June after an unfortunate scenario where they nearly had Cooper Flagg in their sights that came down to a coin flip with the Dallas Mavericks, but we've already belabored that point. Everyone's been reacting to that on Twitter. The draft lottery, though, it's a crapshoot after all. Sometimes you get lucky and sometimes you don't. And while I'm sure that will be one of the tougher moments we'll have to relive as Bulls fans as we watch Cooper Flagg ascend to stardom, we're going to try our best to put that behind us and focus on what the Bulls have right now, the pick at hand, the 12th selection. And as I mentioned prior to the draft lottery, I always like to wait until the draft order has been solidified, as well as seeing some of the prospects and their highlights and numbers at the NBA Draft Combine before I do any draft prospect videos. And now that we have the draft order, we've got a couple days of the Combine under our belt, it is time to talk about some of the players that are projected to go in the range where the Bulls will be drafting. What are their strengths, weaknesses, upside, and potential, and which ones I like best to add to the Bulls roster. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now look, even though the Bulls aren't in the playoffs, it should not stop you from watching some of the most entertaining basketball in the postseason, and what better way to watch it and get in on the action by playing along using Prize Picks, who have partnered with us on this video. Prize Picks is the best place to turn your basketball knowledge into cash. With millions of members, Prize Pick has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Cash in on the basketball playoffs with Prize Picks. Don't miss your last chance to add your favorite players from the court to your Prize Picks lineup, whether it's points, rebounds, assists. Take your pick on more or less. And what I love and has made it more fun for me in watching these games is following along and seeing how my lineups are progressing in real time. Also, you can turn your playoff hot takes into tickets to basketball's championship series. Every lineup you make during the playoffs on Prize Picks will enter you into the Takes 2 ticket sweepstakes, which could get you an A+1, a VIP trip to the ship. And guys, they're offering viewers of this channel $50 instantly when you sign up and play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. So download the app today and use the code BULLCENTRAL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code BULLCENTRAL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Now I want to be clear, I'm only going to be going over prospects that are expected to go in the late lottery where the Bulls will be drafting. So no, I'm not going to be covering Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, VJ Edgecombe, or even Ace Bailey, because those players aren't going to be available when the Bulls are on the clock. Now, in this video, I'm going to be focusing on 4 players specifically that I think will be the best options for this team, and we'll do some more videos like this to cover some other prospects as well. And also because the draft stocks of certain players climb and fall the closer we get to the draft. I'll do updated prospect videos as we get closer to the draft, should there be any drastic changes in player stocks rising far greater than was expected. Now, of course, the biggest thing going into the draft for any team is assessing whether you're drafting for need or you're taking the best player available. In other words, taking the best player available, figure it out later. For the Bulls, I think there is a bit of both when you're drafting 12th. Like when you have a top 5 pick, you draft the best player available and you're not focusing on fit or need at that point. But as you get further and further down the draft board, you're still looking for great players. You're still looking for the gems that maybe fell in the draft and looking for positions of need potentially, or skills that your team needs to round out your overall roster. Now, of course, we all know the Bulls have a logjam in the backcourt. They have way too many guards, which isn't much of a problem in today's positionless style of basketball, and a lot of teams are going small as it is, but the Bulls do need more depth in the front court, and they could always use some more wings. And I think most importantly, they need more defensive-minded players, so those are the main things I'm looking at when going into the draft. Now, the one piece of bad news in all this, at least in my opinion anyway, this draft class, which was initially expected to be a stack class, it's pretty clear that it's much more top-heavy than anything, really outside of the top 5. Even more so the top 10 especially. I don't see a lot of players that are going to turn into stars that are projected to go outside of the top 10. Obviously, I could be wrong, and there's no way to predict that, but the way I see some of these players that are going to be going in the 10 to 15 range, to me, it's very similar to the skill level, the talent level of last year's draft class, which was seen as a weak class. That said, like in any draft, you can always find value later on in the draft, especially in the late lottery, even if they don't turn into stars, but can at least be pieces you can work with. And I want to start with one player that has intrigued me thus far, and that's Jace Richardson. This is the former NBA player Jason Richardson's son. I really like what I've seen from this kid thus far, mainly because he's a tenacious player, a big-time hustler. He has great instincts and decision-making for his age, only 19 years old, and most importantly, he was on fire from the three-point line in college, and you can never have too much shooting in this this league, although I will say shooting for the Bulls, especially three-point shooting, hasn't been as much of a problem as it was a couple years ago, as the Bulls were one of the best three-point shooting teams on high volume last year. But Jace Richardson, he shot 41% from three this past season. He's great in playing off the ball as a cutter and finding ways to get open on the perimeter. Very solid ball handling and control when he's getting to the paint, and something the Bulls so desperately need and should be focused on is he is a great defender on the perimeter. Projects to be a very solid two-way player in this league. I saw a player comp for him of Kirk Hinrich, and I can see it just based on his highlights and player profile. I think the main concern with Jace Richardson is his size. He's not big and bulky like his dad. He's 6'3", not a long wingspan, 192 pounds. He might get bullied a bit at the NBA level, but if he can add more muscle and be stronger of a force as a combo guard, then I like this fit for the Bulls. Yes, I'm aware this is yet another guard on the roster, but I do think the Bulls are likely going to make some shifts this offseason in moving on from some of their guards, or at least that's my hope anyway, if they take a player like Richardson. Another guy I like that is projected to go around the range where the Bulls are going to be selecting is Carter Bryant out of Arizona, and I feel like this is a very typical AK type of player that he likes, so I don't know, maybe that's not necessarily a good thing, but what I like about Carter is, one, he gives you size. He's 6'8", a forward that is very athletic, another high-level defender, shot blocker, but he can also knock it down from long range. He is your prototypical 3-and-D athletic player that is highly coveted in this league. We thought Patrick Williams was going to be that guy, but obviously has been disappointing in being a meaningful contributor, especially last season. He's got the NBA body, he's got the tools to be a solid NBA player, toolsy, as I know AK likes. He's definitely more raw than some of these other prospects, so he's going to take some time to develop, similar to what we saw from Matas Buzelis, but hey, the Bulls have time on their side as they're going down this development route. He's raw, but a player that has a lot of upside. Now, a player that I would really like to have on the roster, but this one is probably more unrealistic as I highly doubt he's still going to be on the board with the 12th pick, but that's Kamon Malawach. I know I'm probably butchering his name, but bear with me. I mean, we know the Bulls are going to need a starting big man for the future, right? Like, Vucevic isn't going to be here long term. He may even get traded this offseason if he doesn't play out the final year of his contract and then leaves to play for a contender. Malawach has the potential to be a star big man in the NBA. Now, I'll add, could be a potential bust as well. But with what we saw from this young 18-year-old kid, one of the youngest players in this draft who won't be turning 19 until later on this summer, what we saw from him as a player who is an elite rim protector, something the Bulls haven't had in years. I mean, I'm not going to say he's Victor Wembanyama because that would be a massive stretch, but his ability to deter players from finishing in the paint to the point where they won't even attempt a floater when they see him down low is very Wemby-esque. On the offensive end, he's a great lob threat, which again, the Bulls haven't had a legitimate lob threat in the pick and roll for years, ever since they traded away Daniel Gafford. What's also crazy about Malawach's journey to where he is today is that he only started playing basketball 4 years ago and quickly rose to dominance at such a young age for the South Sudanese national team, playing for the FIBA World Cup, being the youngest player to compete in the Olympics for men's basketball. The progression we've seen from this kid from age 14 to 18 has been incredible, which would lead you to think he has some insane upside. I think the biggest concerns around Malawach are his frame. He needs to put on some more muscle. He's 7'2" with a very long wingspan, but he's only 250 pounds. There are concerns that he'll struggle with the NBA's level of physicality, and unlike Wemby, he's not as mobile and fluid, which leads one to think that he may have a harder time staying in front of faster guards slashing to the basket. Again, all of this might be a bit moot because he's likely going well before the Bulls make their selection, which I know I said I wasn't going to do, but there is a small chance that he could slip if scouts are wary of his lack of mobility and physicality. And then finally, the last guy I want to talk about, which might be a more controversial one, as I do think it's valid to think this player could have bust potential, but to me, I simply can't pass up on his defensive tenacity, and that's Collin Murray-Boyles, the sophomore out of South Carolina. Casey Johnson reported at the Combine that a scout told him he's the best defensive prospect in this draft, and a lot of other mock drafts and reports are saying similar things about this kid as well. Obviously, slightly older than the other guys I've mentioned, 20, still insanely young, but the others I talked about were either 18 or 19, but that's also what I like about Murray-Boyles is his level of maturity and feel for the game. He's 6'7", which is a bit undersized for a power forward or center, which has been his typical position that he's played in college, but he's a bulky dude, super strong, great reflexes, high IQ on the defensive end and in the paint, but also can quickly get out to the perimeter. But it's not just his defense that intrigues me, or the fact that he's just a big in general. He's actually got solid footwork in the paint and finishing ability on offense. Like, everyone likes to talk about his defense, but he actually averaged close to 17 points per game last season. He's not a shooter. He absolutely is not a shooter, and to be honest, that may cause him to fall quite a bit in the draft to the point where the Bulls may end up being able to take him at 12. But given the Bulls were lights out in shooting last year, you would hope that Murray Boyle's lack of shooting won't be as much of a concern, or at least can be hidden a bit. Some of the player comps I saw for him, Draymond Green and Ron Artest, I mean, as long as he's not a loose cannon personality-wise like either of those guys, then I love the sound of that. A hungry, maximum effort, grit and grind type player who is elite on defense but has the tools to be effective on offense. That's a player worth exploring, which, by the way, the Bulls did meet Murray Boyles at the Combine, and he said he left with a very strong impression of the front office and their level of engagement and connectivity. Again, I see Murray Boyles as one of those players that has big boomer bust potential, high ceiling but also a very low floor, but it might be worth the risk to take him at 12 if he's available, which I believe he will be based on some of the mock draft boards that I've seen. Now, like I said, for this video, I'm just focusing on these 4 players. I'll do some prospecting profiles and some others that will likely be options for the Bulls that they'll be looking at. The Bulls did meet with Trey Johnson, Thomas Sorber, Asa Newell, in addition to Colin Murray Boyles. At the time of this recording anyway, I'm sure they're probably going to be meeting with more as the draft combine continues. So I will do some player profiles of these guys as well as others who I think will be intriguing options for the Bulls, like Jeremiah Fears, Igor Demon, Cedric Coward, and then I'll also do a video on guys I'm not that excited about that could be prospects going in that range where the Bulls are selecting, players I would rather the Bulls avoid. But anyway, I want to hear from you guys. Who do you want to see the Bulls draft with the 12th selection? Let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.